If you've been playing classical music for years and jazz still feels completely foreign, it's not because you lack talent, it's because no one showed you the bridge. Today, I'm going to show you exactly that. Maybe you've spent years mastering scales, sight reading, and tone, and yet jazz feels like starting from scratch. Well, here's the truth. You're sitting on skills most jazz students spend years trying to build. Today, I'm going to show you examples of how you, as a classical musician, can transfer some of those classical skills to jazz. Hi, my name is Shannon Gunn. I am the founder of the Jazz Improv Institute, and please like, subscribe, hit the bell for the alert in order to get the notifications every time I put out a new video. So, I was once a classical musician. Now I am only playing jazz. And when I was a classical musician, I put myself through grad school playing trombone in orchestras and teaching private lessons. So I know exactly where you've been. I have been on a long and winding journey to learn jazz. I found that I had a hard time finding a mentor or anyone who would teach me because I had been trained mostly in classical. Now, I've played in big bands my whole life, practically 30 years, but I didn't have a whole lot of experience with how to read chord changes. And so I did get a master's in jazz and I got some experience there. And then since then, I have been playing jazz primarily for the past 15 years. And I want to make it easier for someone else who is interested in learning jazz to be able to have a mentor and some guidance. I think everyone has a right to learn jazz. And I also think it's a really great skill to have. Improvisation is something where I feel like everyone should be able to improvise, even music educators, because I feel like it's a way of expressing yourself that's at the highest artistic level. So if you're frustrated trying to learn jazz, you have all the skills you need. You just need some sort of reframing to learn how to apply it to a different genre. For example, you may have a skill in sight reading, or just generally speaking, reading music. So in jazz, you want to be able to use this skill when you're playing in the jazz band, like a big band. It's really helpful to have that skill. But when it comes to improvising and playing on the bandstand, you actually want to utilize this skill to a certain extent, but you're also going to have to put it aside. Because in jazz, a lot of the written sheet music for jazz combo performances is not always right. Sometimes the chords are wrong, and it's not necessarily even that the sheet music is wrong. The art of playing a jazz tune is being able to interpret it, especially for the American Songbook. So there's two kinds of jazz standards, jazz tunes and American Songbook. There is a right way to play it, but if you play it exactly as written, especially for the American Songbook, it's probably not going to sound as good as if you interpret the melody. So the way I always teach this, and this is in my 7 days jazz, classical to jazz course, the way I always teach that is to have students listen to Billie Holiday singing All of Me and looking at the lead sheet while they listen to it. If you do that, you will see an example of how a jazz musician stays true to the melody and to the song while also interpreting the melody. And it could be any vocalist really, and any song really. I just like using that one because a lot of people have heard of it. So that's one example of a skill you have that you're going to utilize for the big band, but you're going to want to have some critical thinking when you read sheet music for the jazz combo. Another skill that classical players have that is very valuable in jazz is technical facility. You already know your scales, and you may just need a little tweaking as far as understanding how to use them. In jazz, we use chord scale theory, at least since the 1960s, to be able to know what scales sound good over what chords. So for example, if you're playing a minor 2-5, that is moving towards the major 7 chord, any mode of the major chord will work over that chord progression. And in jazz, you learn how to recognize tonal centers very quickly by finding those 2/5s. So if you know your major scales, then you're already halfway there for being able to improvise over tonal centers as you discover them throughout the music. Now, it helps to have a mentor because it's really hard to figure all that out on your own. Another thing that you are so strong on is tone production and phrasing. You have a background in how to play with a good sound if you've played an orchestra or concert band. And so that tone is going to carry you forward in jazz. One thing that you will want to work on is the time feel. And so you can do time feel exercises. For example, just take a tune that you already know, like Happy Birthday, and swing it instead of playing it straight like I just swung it to begin with, by the way, because that's what I'm used to. But yeah, just swing it like. And the swing feel is all around us in popular music as well. For example, the shuffle beat can be found in a lot of pop tunes. For example, if I was to try to teach the shuffle beat, I would send somebody a recording of Michael Jackson, The Way You Make Me Feel. That's a perfect example. There's just a lot of pop tunes. So you probably already swing if you've been playing pop tunes and in wedding bands. You just need to embrace that concept as part of the standard of what you're doing when you're playing in jazz. Another skill you have as a classical musician is the ability to sort of at least know what notes are in chords, at least the general dominant 7 and minor 7 types of chords. Now, in jazz, it's helpful to be able to recognize these chords quickly and to be able to quickly identify tonal centers. So in jazz, we look at the chords both vertically and horizontally. But with a classical background, you're going to be able to figure out 2/5s right away. You're not going to have a hard time because you're going to understand, oh, that looks like a minor 2 chord to a dominant 7 chord. That is a 2/5. And by having a mentor or somebody sort of explain it to you, the chord progressions and how those are tonal centers, that can be very helpful for you. You already have the theory. You just need to learn how to apply it in a new setting with a chord chart and tonal centers. So what to practice this week? What I think you could do right away is to pull up a jazz tune and write out the 3rds and 7ths of each chord. If you don't know, send me a note. You can either send a comment or you can join the school community and post a question on there. I already have that set up for you if you don't want to actually have to write it all out yourself. It's in the school community. And the 3rds and 7ths of each tune are called guide tones. By writing them out or playing them, you can identify them, but by playing them, it helps develop your ear to be able to hear those 2 markers within a song. Those 2 notes, the 3rds and the 7ths, are like the guardrails. So in improvisation, when you're flipping between different chords, you're going to want to start noticing those 3rds and 7ths. So the first thing I would do, if you want to just start learning jazz improvisation, take a blues, for example, and play the guide tones on a blues. And I have them all written out for you if you would like to just read the sheet music for it to learn how to do that. That would be a great first activity for you to be able to do. It's long tones, whole notes, each note, and that's something that you could consider doing. So if you want all of that laid out for you day by day over a 7-day workshop, please feel free to take my free 7 days classical to jazz course up on my school community, and you're welcome to seek out feedback. It's very helpful if you can get feedback and mentorship. And I have a lot of information up there about like just contextual stuff as far as like how jazz works and how to be able to sit in if you'd like to do so on the bandstand. So I hope this has been helpful. I hope as a classical musician you understand that you are already way farther along than a lot of other people, And if you want to learn jazz, you have a pathway to do that. There's nothing holding you back except for whether or not you want to do it. So, and you can just work on it, little 5 minutes here and there, doesn't take a long time, and just think of it as like a lifelong learning process. All right, well, I hope that's been helpful. If you haven't already done so, please like, subscribe, and hit the bell for alerts so you hear when we have a new video coming up. And I hope this has been helpful, and happy practicing jazz.